Yeah. Now, what auspicious week here in Shvat, we are going to speak about the Rashash HaKadosh, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, one of the famous rabbis in the last few hundred years, without a doubt. Naturally, over here, we are in Hebrew date of the 10th of Shvat. It's going to mark his Kilula. He was very, very famous rabbi. He was born in the year 1720. He passed away in English year 1777. He was about 57 years of age when he passed away. He was actually born in an area of Tzna'a. We're not too sure exactly 100% sure where he was born. Either it was in Sana'a or Shurab, respectively, but he was a very great rabbi. His full title was Rabbi Shalom Mizrachי Sharabi, also nicknamed as the Rashash HaKadosh. Very, very great rabbi. He'd gone on to become an outstanding Kabbalist in Eretz Yisrael, especially. He was from Teman. He would work as a Rosh Yeshiva of the famous Yeshivat Bet El in Jerusalem. He was author of great Torah books, including the Siddur HaRashash, and which concentrate on, let's say, the Kabbanot within regards to Tefillot, the various different intentions. And very, very interesting. He will have a very, very well decorated city. Let's just say a short synopsis about him just before we'll go delve more into him and maybe a few stories. Also, it's interesting. So it will be towards the latter part of his life he'll become the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet El. Interesting enough, his daughter would get married to Rabbi Chaim Abraham Gagin of Jerusalem, making him the great-grandfather of the famous Rabbi Shem Tov Gagin, who we're going to speak about in due course. He was also known as Keter Shem Tov. His son was another great rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Mizrachי Sharabi, and his grandson, I think, will go on to become the chief rabbi, Rabbi Chaim Abraham Gagin, who we'll also speak about beforehand. So, as we said before, he was probably born in Rab in Yemen. And he would move to Jerusalem, which was then under Ottoman rule, and it would be in fulfillment of a vow. Now, I recorded another video about the Rashash HaKadosh about 3.5 years ago. He was one of the first few videos we recorded in this very, very long series. I think it was maybe the 5th or 6th video, and I said the interesting story of what vow he took on, which will end him coming to Eretz Yisrael and stuff. So I reckon everyone to watch that. Now, I think on his way originally, when he would come to Eretz Yisrael, when he was going from Yemen, he would stay in India, Baghdad, and Damascus. In Damascus, very, very interesting enough, we'll go into robust debates in halachic discourse, let's just say, within regards to a measurement of a kazayit over there, the olive size of a kazayit, of a matzah, how much should be eaten on the Pesach Seder, and that was a specific topic, so you can see he was really grappling into halacha and Jewish law. In Jerusalem, he would make a huge, let's say, impression on the local rabbinic rabbis, the sages in of itself, and will end up obviously being mentioned very much inside many of the books. We know the whole famous story about how he would become eventually the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet El, and let's say the famous Talmudic Academy over there. He belonged to a group of 12 Makubalalim, great Kabbalists, including the Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulay, the Torah Chacham, also Rabbi Chaim de la Rosa, one of the great rabbis, a Spanish rabbi and a Kabbalist, Rabbi Yom Tov Al-Ghazi, and other great Sephardic Yemenite sages. He would be in Yeshivat Bet El, as we're going to learn about, until he passed away and will eventually become the Rosh Yeshiva. Interesting story within regards to that. He was a devotee of the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria and a principal innovator with the Lurianic Kabbalah. It says that his departure from Yemen will actually come with a miracle. I think at that point in time, a rich Muslim woman would try to seduce him, and he would end up surviving. He'd jump out, I think, of a building to run away, and would eventually make a vow that he would come to Eretz Yisrael, and he did at the end. I think when he get to Yeshivat Bet El, he would work as a servant and hid his learning from the others. He was very, very humble, and when his knowledge of Kabbalah was accidentally discovered, he would become a major, let's just say, member of the Kabbalistic circles. According to, I think, one legend over there, the prophet Elijah appeared to him, and he is understood by the major Kabbalists as being himself the Gilgul of the Arizal. Very interesting enough. His grandson, as I mentioned before, was Rabbi Shlomo Moshe Chai Gagin Sharabi. He would write a poem of praise on his mastery of the Etz Chaim and the Shmona Sha'arim of great Kabbalist Rabbi Chaim Vital. Members of the great Bet El Yeshiva would continue visiting his grave, or it becomes a pilgrimage. Especially nowadays, many thousands of people will come, especially at time period of the Hilula or throughout the world. Apparently, Rabbi Sharabi is credited with a specific miracle that would open the Kotel to Jewish community. I'm not too sure which era of time it was in of itself, but that's what's reported over here. We're going to explore some of his writings. Let's explore a bit more within regards to the famous rabbi's life. So, as we said before, he was possibly born in Shurab or Tzana'a in Teman, and his father's name was Rabbi Yitzchak. And it says over here, Yesh omnem shenolad biyom ptirato shel Rabbi Shalom Sharabi. Now, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi was a very great rabbi of his time, famous Yemenite Rabbi. Let's just say he was one of the great rabbis there. So maybe on the same specific day, when he passed away, he was born in himself, the Rosh Kodesh. Seemingly, he would learn under auspices of the great rabbis from Tzana. As we said before, he would actually move to the land of Israel, traveling very well to Basra in Iraq, Baghdad, Bombay in India, and will learn the Sefer Zohar in the Yeshiva. I think Sha'al Kibrot Shel Rabbi Yitzchak, Harab Yitzchak Gaon. He would actually learn over there in that specific Talmudic academy. Ad Shematza She'ara the Damascus. So I think at that point in time, famous story with regards to where he would find like a traveling group in Damascus. Misham Himshich Lachalap. He would go to Aleppo. Sham Shemesh Parnas Toke Eglon Legvir. He would do some workings at that point in time for a very rich person who Amad B'Ksharim in Chachmei, especially in, I think, Aleppo. He was close to, had a connection with some of the great rabbis from that city. Ubein ha'sha'ar chelek alehem b'she'ela halachatit b'noga lemitzvot achilat kazait. As we said before, he would get into that robust debate within regards to different halakhic parameters of what actually constitutes a kazait. Very interesting enough. Who would, I think, eventually, as we mentioned before, he would work as a shamash Beit Knesset Yeshivat Bet El. That was under the auspices of Rav Gedalia Chayon, and Rav Gedalia Chayon was a very great rabbi of his time. He was Mukubal. He was also a Shluchei D'Rabbanan, a rabbinic emissary. He was a founder of the Yeshivat Bet El in Jerusalem and was considered one of the great rabbis of his time, without doubt, in just all over the world in of itself. He Rav Gedalia Chayon himself, happened to have been a Talmid of the famous Rabbi Chaim Alfandari. I think he was born, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure when he was born, but he passed away in 1750. I think, very enough. There's a lot, let's say, decorated within regards to the famous Rabbi Chayon in of itself. I think he was Shluchei D'Rabbanan, also he was a Ram, and I think he was close to many of the Gedolei Adors at that point in time. It's something we have to point out. So very interesting. Remember, the caliber of rabbis at that point in time was like the likes of Rabbi Avram Gershon Mikitov and the Baal Shem Tov over there. And I think he actually would pass away on the 5th of Av, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Gedalia Chayon, and was buried in Jerusalem. And I think he also had a connection with the famous Chida also. So a lot can be stated with regards to him. But let's go back now to Rabbi Shalom Sharabi over here. He happens to be the great rabbi we're speaking about. Now, after the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Gedalia Chayon, passed away, Munat LeRoshot HaYeshiva, he would be appointed the Rosh Yeshiva. Benoya Harav Chizkiah Yitzchak Sharabi, his son was Rav Chizkiah Yitzchak Sharabi, Menechado Harav Rafael Avram Shalom Mizrahi Sharabi, Shimshoaf Hem Bereshut HaYeshiva. So who was Rabbi, let's say, Rafael Avram Shalom Mizrahi Sharabi? He would get prominent position afterwards. He passed away in the year 1775. He happened to have done, he was born in 1775. 2 years before the Rashash, I believe, had passed away. Who was he? He was a Rosh of the Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet El, if I'm not mistaken. This was obviously at a window of time after Rabbi Shalom Sharabi. He also was great Kabbalist, if I'm not mistaken. And much can be said within regards to him. And it was very much connected to other great rabbis, including Rabbi Yedidia Rafael Abu Lafia, who was Rosh Yeshiva also of the Yeshivat Bet El at one window of time. He was also of great Torah works, including Divrei Shalom, Davar Shalom. These were great Torah colossal works in of itself. Now, friends, anyone you are tuning in live at the moment, welcome to our community as we are exploring the history within regards to a really famous rabbi from Teman, from Iraq. He would go on to be really imprinted as a great rabbi also in Eretz Yisrael. His name was Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, also popularly known as a famous Rosh HaKadosh. Was a very, very much important rabbi of his point in time. It's a rabbi that we've spoken about very much let's just say in a huge amount here inside this series, probably on multiple videos, and I very much recommend everyone to watch over those previous presentations that we've recorded within regards to him. Okay, so let's explore a bit more within regards to the famous rabbi's life. Now, anyone tuning in, welcome to our community as we're exploring a few of the highlights of a very famous Yemenite rabbi's life over here, and it's our second edition that we're actually recording about him, because we did record a special feature, as we stated before, right at the onset of this series, long series, which we started more than 3.5 years ago. So I very much recommend everyone to watch over those presentations over here. Okay, so let's state a bit more within regards to him. There's a lot that we can actually say over. Very, very important video. And he would... השמועה שליווה נשא לאישה את ביתו של הרב חיון. I think we get married to the daughter of Rabbi Gedalia Chayon. ככל הנראה אינו מבוססת. הרשש עמד בראש חברת רבנים שנקראת חברת עבד שלום. As I mentioned before, he would actually stand among a cluster of really great rabbis, also known as חברת עבד שלום. ובין תלמידיו, as I mentioned before, would be one of the people in this great Chabura, also famous Chidat, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulay, Rav Yom Tov Al-Ghazi, also known as Marit Al-Ghazi. Who was Rav Yom Tov Al-Ghazi? He was a Rishon Letzion. He was so great. He was a chief rabbi. He was Shluchei de Rabbanan. He would be also the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bet El at one point in time, and was known for his great Torah works and Sefarim in of himself. Respectively, another rabbi he was close to was Rav Chaim de la Rosa, one of the famous Kabbalists that lived in Eretz Yisrael, and also the famous Rabbi Avram Gershon Kitov. He was famous Kabbalist. He was someone very, very well known. I think he was a brother-in-law, actually, to be precise, of the Baal Shem Tov, if I'm not mistaken. And he himself made Aliyah, I think, in the year 1747, long, long time ago, nearly 280 years ago in of itself. So there was a close connection over there. Now, other great rabbis, I think, would actually name a yeshiva way, way later on, after the Rosh Hashanah passed away, in his name. For example, I think rabbis such as Rabbi David Batsri, Yitzchak Batsri, for example, these were great rabbonim we've spoken about on various occasions before, would set up a yeshiva Mekubalim HaShalom in Jerusalem. That's named after him. Who's Rav David Batsri? He was a great Kabbalist. He was a Rosh Yeshiva, respectively of Yeshivat HaShalom in Jerusalem. The one we're speaking about, Rabbi Yitzchak Batsri Shlita, is a very, very great rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva. He's also standing, so let's just say, in that specific position of this place. Tikan ki mekubalim yerachu tikun chatzot b'kotel ha'maravi. So seemingly he would be very much connected for a tefillah of the tikun chatzot at the kotel ha'maravi, the western wall. Now, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi will leave over some phenomenal books, we have to point out over here, including a Perush V'Agaot HaShamash, Sidur HaRashash, Rechovot HaNahar, Emet V'Shalom. I think there were other works in of itself that will be actually printed over here. So that's very, very interesting. Let's explore just a bit more within regards to that. Now, friends, anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. If you are near, we're exploring a few of the highlights within regards to a famous rabbi's life, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, who was very much key rabbi. He was also known as Rosh HaKadosh, which is a huge compliment to play about the, let's just say, the great Chacham in of its own right. And we're just exploring a few highlights within regards to Rav Shalom Sharabi's life. Okay, so we can say more. So he was one of the early commentators on the works of the Ariyah Kadosh, which was a major source of Kabbalah. I think his Siddur was known as the Siddur HaKavanot, and I think his main Siddur used today by great Kabbalists for prayer, meditation, yeshiva study. It's a Siddur with extensive, let's say, Kabbalistic meditations by way of commentary. His writings include the Emet V'Shalom, the Rechovot HaNahar, the Derech Shalom, and Nahar Shalom. I think it was edited very much by Rabbi Yedidia Rav El Chai Abu Lafia, in which I think there'll be an answer to 70 questions of the great rabbis of Tunis. who were among the leaders of Sephardic authorities in the 18th century. He would commentate on various minhagim, customs of the Yemenite Jews, and compiled them in volumes known as the Minhagei HaRashash, or Minhagei Rashash. It was an exclusive edition, let's just say, of the Code of Jewish Law, which gave interpretations of halachot, as well as noting particular customs, especially of the Shammai Yemenite community. And these volumes especially are very much used in this community to reach halachic decisions regarding chagim, festivals, marriage, and Shabbat services, Sabbath services in of itself, respectively. So, very, very well decorated rabbi in of itself, and something that we must very much point out. I'm just going to take a short 1-minute break over here, friends. We will be back in a minute. So in the meantime, sit back, enjoy. And if you are live at the moment, welcome to our community as we are exploring the life of a very famous rabbi over here. And it's always a privilege to speak and to, educate also here on every single opportunity, especially when we happen to be speaking about famous rabbis. Yes, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, Rashash HaKadosh. Well, friends, we will be back in a minute over here. So watch your space. In the meantime, relax, and we will speak in a 1-minute time. I'll just be back in a minute. Okay, thanks everyone for being patient over here. We are exploring the life of the great Rabbi Shalom Sharabi over here on this special edition over here, and we're going to try and relate over more stories with regards to him. We did speak about the Yeshivat Bet El and the famous story within regards to how he becomes a Rosh Yeshiva, how he was discovered. At the end, he was came in as a very, very, let's just say, a Gabbai over there, or Shamash, you could say, and then later on be discovered for being able to answer the most toughest halachic questions in of itself. Respectful. Now, there's other stories, I think, that come, let's say, he really had a thirst for Torah study in himself. I think his actual initial job inside the yeshiva itself was to wake up students for the midnight rectification prayer. I think Tikkun HaChatzot. His job was to keep shelves of the holy books in order, bring water and serve hot tea. Obviously, at the end, he became famous and known as being the illuminary great rabbi over there in of itself. And one, let's just say, and eventually he would take over from Rav Gedalia Hayon to become the Rosh Yeshiva, which is very interesting. The whole story of the note, and I do believe we did state over that story in of itself. Now, I think it's actually interesting. I think his wife will be Rabbanit Chana, that was the daughter of the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Gedalia Hayon. And I think Chana, the daughter of the Rosh Yeshiva, realized how much father wanted to find out. Originally, there was this specific story where notes were being left answering tough questions, and they didn't know who actually it was at that point in time that was answering these tough questions, and it was a Shamash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, that was actually answering it. And eventually, I think he would get married to Rabbanit Chana, respectively, at that point in time. So there's different dates, I think, when Rav Gedalia passed away. I'm not too sure, but I think the Rashash at that point in time was 27 years of age when Rav Gedalia Hayon was passed away. Then he would become the Rosh Yeshiva, and that was Rav Gedalia's dying wish that the Rashash would become. He was obviously married to Chana at that point in time. They had a son. I think they named Yitzhak at that stage in time. One of the Talmidim was famous Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azleh, the Maharit Al-Ghazi, who we spoke about before, also would be one of his Talmidim. Also, I think become Rosh Yeshiva. Also, he would write a commentary of the Etz Chaim, of which Rabbi Yedidia Abulafia would say that whoever learns Etz Chaim without the commentary of the Rashash is like a blind man feeling his way in the dark. Among his most famous writings is the Sidur HaRashash. Why? It's because it's known for its special Kabbalistic intentions for prayer, which has become, let's say, the standard for the vast majority, especially possibly all Sephardic Kabbalists today. And obviously, the 10th of Shvat over here is his Hilula. There was another famous Kabbalist, Rabbi Chaim Pelagi, testified that Rabbi Shalom Sharabi's soul was that of the holy Ari Zal of Tzvat. Rabbi Yitzchak Kaduri, furthermore, would say, one can have memorized all of the written teachings of the Ari and have studied them and the commentaries upon them in great depth. But if you have not learned the works of the Rashash, you have not entered into the study of Kabbalah. Obviously, he's considered, let's say, the father of all contemporary Sephardic Kabbalists over there. So he wrote many, many great books. One of the most important things is the customs of the Rashash, the Minhagei Rashash, which is a multi-volumed compilation of commentaries upon the customs of Yemenite Jews. He would produce exclusive edition of the Code of Jewish Law, where he gives his interpretations of Jewish law, as well as noting the particular customs of the Shammai Yemenite community, as we mentioned about before. So very, very interesting enough. And Nahar Shalom is a Torah colossal book, so much can be said also within regards to that. Anyone tuning in live, we're exploring a few of the highlights of the famous Rabbi Shalom Mizrachי Sharabi, who was a great rabbi from Yemen, and so many important stories, let's just say, is actually associated to him. That's something that we very much have to point out over here. So we spoke about the story of the note, how we get married, and it was just a brilliance within regards to the rabbi itself. Much more can be said within regards to him. And he's a rabbi that we've spoken about here on various occasions before, and very family members. And I think the National Library of Israel would continue with his lineages and documenting various different articles of him. Now, who were the Rosh Yeshivot? First of all, the Yeshivat Bet El. Let's explore over here, because the Yeshivat Bet El was very much probably the most famous yeshivot in the last few hundred years in Israel, without a doubt. I think it was founded obviously in the year 1737 by Rav Gedalia, as we mentioned about. Actually, interesting enough, the Yeshivat Bet El would very much grow under the leadership of Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, and become one of the main yeshivot in Jerusalem, with 40 scholars from the Sephardic and Ashkenazic communities. Rabbi Chayon obviously organized the life of the yeshiva around prayer services, which through, let's say, mystical communion with God would bring the scholars closer to understanding of the secret teachings of Kabbalah. Rabbi Sharabi initiated, let's say, regulations, orders, and kabbanot, intentions of the daily tefillot, according to Nahar Shalom prayer book, I believe, which I think was actually published in Salonika in 1806, which he authored, continued the teachings of the Arizal and following a cosmological approach while incorporating Kabbalistic symbolism and treatises and thoughts, meditations, known today as Sidur HaRashash. It would remain, together with Etz Chaim of Rabbi Chaim Vital, the focus of Kabbalah studies in the yeshiva. Very interesting enough. So, I wanted to speak a bit about Rav Gagin, who we spoke about beforehand. I think it's very, very important to speak about that. We will also explore who were some of the Rosh Yeshivot of the famous Yeshivat Bet El. I think it's very, very important also to look at the history in itself. And so, we're talking about Rav Gagin over here. So we will say a word now within regards to him, because he was a key figure, let's just say, of his point in time. Okay, so Rav Shem Tov Gagin, if I'm not mistaken, I think his daughter got married, as I said before, on the outset to Rabbi Chaim Abraham Gagin of Jerusalem, which would make him the great-great-grandfather of Rav Shem Tov Gagin, the famous Keter Shem Tov he happened to be in. So let's explore a bit with regards to him. He was born in the year 1884 and passed away in 1953. He was a rabbi of Moroccan rabbinical dynasty, which emigrated to Palestine from Spain at the time of the Inquisition. And he was a great-grandson of Rabbi Chaim Avraham Gagin, who was first Hacham Bashi of the Holy Land during the Ottoman Empire. And so, with that title, Hacham Bashi, the word chief rabbis before him, he was son and nephew, I think, respectively, of Rabbis Isaac and Abraham Gagin. He was great-great-grandson of famous scholar, obviously Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, who we're speaking about today. He studied actually in the Resh Tzion schooling system, college system, and was a pupil of Rabbi Yaakov Alfia, if I'm not mistaken. And at an early age, he would contribute to articles to the Palestinian Hebrew press, if I'm not mistaken, on aspects of Jewish traditional observances, as well on biblical and theological matters. He was awarded rabbinical diplomas by numerous authorities, including Rabbi Chaim Berlin, and Rabbi Yaakov Meir, who was chief rabbi at that point in time, and possibly Rabbi Avram Cook, if I'm not mistaken. He was invited to serve in Manchester, being appointed head of Jewish court in 1920. In 1927, he was appointed the Rosh Yeshiva of the famous Judith Montefiore College in Ramsgate. He would also serve as a senior rabbi at Lauderdale Road Synagogue in Maida Vale of the Spanish and Portuguese Jewish Congregation of London. And very much, there's a lot spoken about him. His son, I think, Rabbi Dr. Morris Gagun, would serve as a rabbi of the I believe it was called the Whittington Congregation of Spanish and Portuguese Jews. He would hold various other positions. If I'm not mistaken, he was Dayan of the Bet-Din of the Jewish community of Egypt between 1911 to 1919. He was senior rabbi of the Sephardic Congregation of Whittington, Manchester, 1919 to 1926. He was a Dayan of the Manchester Bet-Din between 1920 to 1926. He was a chief Chacham, appointed ecclesiastical chief Chacham, head of Jewish court of the Spanish Portuguese community in England. He was a principal of the Judith Montefiore Theological College of Ramsgate in 1927, appointed by Act of Parliament in 1934, a vice president of the Rabbinical Commission for the licensing of shochatim in Great Britain, and he was the head of the Sephardic Midrash Shaim in London from 1935, and was author, obviously, famously, of the Keter Shem Tov, an encyclopedic, let's say, treatise which examines and compares the rites, ceremonies, and liturgy of Eastern and Western Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and will expound in huge amounts of ways over here. So he was a great grandson of the famous rabbi. So it's interesting. Rabbi Shalom Sharabi would be the Rosh Yeshiva between 1751 to 1776, more than a generation. Afterwards, it will be followed by Rabbi Yom Tov Al-Ghazi, who we spoke about before. That will be for, I think, 1 year window of time. He'd go on, remember, to become a Rishon LeZion of Jerusalem. Then afterwards, be Rabbi Cheskia Yitzchak Sharabi, who we mentioned before. He would steady the ship for a few years, have that position. I think he was the son of the Rashash. Then it will be Rabbi Raphael Avram Shalom Mizrachי Sharabi, another great rabbi. He was a grandson of the Rashash and the son of Rav Cheskia Yitzchak. I think he would be for a much longer time period of 20 years, interesting enough. Then it will be Rabbi Mordechai Navon and Rabbi Avram Gagin. So that he's Rabbi Avram Gagin, we did, I believe, speak about before. Let's say just a short word with regards to him. Rabbi Avram Gagin, I think, would be born in 1787, passed away in 1848. He was Kabbalist. He was Rosh Yeshiva, also of Yeshivat Bet El, and the Chacham Bashi, if I'm not mistaken, and very much take on various different importances. I think he was actually born in Turkey, in Kushta. That's something that we have to point out initially. So he was, and later on will earn in position. He was a 23rd Rishon LeZion, if I'm not mistaken. And that's very interesting. I think maybe between 1842 to 1848. Interesting enough. And will be sandwiched, let's say, between Rabbi Yehuda Navon and Rabbi Yitzchak Kovo as this great rabbi over there. So much more can be said also within regards to him. Let's continue over here. We were speaking about the Rabbi Shalom Sharabi. He was very, very close to many other great rabbis. We have to point out his sage, Rabbi Shalom, I believe, would pass away in 1777. We're talking about close to 250 years ago here from the time of recording, and you can see how much of great imprint he had. Okay, so who else were the chief rabbis there? I forgot to mention that in Yeshiva Bet El between 1848 to 1871, Rabbi Yedidia Raphael Abu Lafia will be the chief rabbi. He was also Rosh Mukubal in Yeshiva Bet El, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Aaron Azriel will be a head rabbi over there inside the Yeshivat Bet El. And very interesting. I think he came from Jerusalem. And he was a key rabbi, I think, between 1871 to 1879. That was then followed up by Rabbi Shalom Moshe Chai Gagin. Very, very great rabbi of his time. He lived between 1832 to 1883. He was a Shadar in Jerusalem, author of Piyutim books, and the Rosh Yeshiva of Bet El, naturally, we have to point out. Also, Rabbi Sasson Bachot Moshe Prasido. He was another Rosh Yeshiva over there, if I'm not mistaken. And then that will be followed by Rabbi Masuta Cohen El Haddad, who was also a Parshanat Talmud and a Mukubal, and the Rosh Yeshiva Bet El for 24 years, if I'm not mistaken. That will be followed then by Rabbi Shalom Hadaya, one of the famous rabbis of the time. He was the head of the Jewish court of the Sephardic Jewish community over there, and the Rosh Yeshiva also over here, very prominent position. Rav Ovadia Hodaya would then follow his situation, and then Rabbi Cheskel Kohen, who was also, I think, a rabbi of the Sephardi community of his city, and was a rabbi in Rehovot. Then Rabbi Shalom Mordechai Chaim Hadaya, Rabbi Raphael Hadaya would be obviously more recently this Rosh Yeshiva, or this Yeshiva would have Rav Meir Yehuda Getz as let's just say the head rabbi there. And then I think Rav Yisrael Avichai, if I'm not mistaken, is the Rosh Yeshiva currently of Yeshivat Bet El, another famous rabbi. Let's say something about Rav Yisrael Avichi over here. I think he's about 65 years of age here at the time of recording, and I think he would actually learn in Merkaz Arav Yeshiva, if I'm not mistaken, was an expert student. That's something else that we have to point out very much over here. But friends, so that's been the history of the rabbinate in the famous Yeshivat Bet El. But friends, over here we are a community. We are learning about famous rabbis. Yesterday we happened to be speaking about the famous Rashash HaKadosh, very, very great rabbi of his point in time, and always important to speak about them. And very, very important happens to be. So everyone, if you are new at the moment, welcome to our community as we explore today the life of the Rashash HaKadosh Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, who was probably one of the most famous rabbis, I think, definitely in the last couple of 100 years. That's something very much we have to point out over here within regards to him. Yeah, so I expect everyone to look more into his books, into his studies, and learn more about him, about the great rabbis of Yeshiva. And watch over that first part that we recorded. I believe the first part of the, let's say, first take that we recorded 3.5 years ago on the Rosh Hashanah is one of the earlier videos, let's just say, within regards to him, or something that we sent at one stage in time. So I recommend everyone to look more into that. Now, friends, over here, we are a community. Please, anyone, if you're not usually doubling in Minyan or stuff like that, please try and go now, learn more about these great rabbis we happen to be speaking about today. We've recorded biography videos, I think, of approximately 1,000, as many as 1,400 rabbis. That's the first thing I will definitely point out over here within regards to the great Chacham. And we enjoy it a lot. Another exciting project that we are working on at the moment is to record videos about the history of various rabbinic countries of yesteryear, places that had, like, let's say, a rabbinic presence. I think it's very, very important. And, a lot of people are getting a lot of importances from that. So that's something we have to point out over here. And learn more about the great Chachamim of yesteryear. There's so much to learn about, so much to imbue. And we happen to be speaking about famous Yemenite Rabbi over here, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, which is very, very interesting. So anyone, if you haven't tuned in live, please welcome to our community. And please, if you can, learn more about great Chachamim of yesteryear. Just shows the fantastic progress that we're doing. And just wishing everyone well. And Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, the Rashash HaKadosh, the great rabbis of his time, it marks his Hilula, everyone. So please, everyone, be patient, watch, educate, and learn. And Be'ez Hashem, just good things for all of Israel. Thank you for watching, everyone.